Imagine you are waiting for a bus on a rainy afternoon in London or New York. In front of you is a large billboard. It features a close-up of a child of color. Their eyes are wide, filled with tears, staring straight into your soul. A fly sits on their cheek, which they are too weak to swat away. Their belly is distended from severe malnutrition. Below is a text in blood red, 60 cents a day to save a life. You freeze. Your heart skips a beat. Guilt washes over you immediately as you look down at the latte in your hand. It costs 10 times the amount needed to save that child. You pull out your phone, scan the QR code in the corner, and transfer $10. A ding notifies you of a successful transaction. You let out a sigh of relief. But wait, don't be too quick to blame yourself. That feeling of satisfaction isn't your fault. It is a psychological effect meticulously designed by top-tier marketing experts. This system isn't just selling salvation for the poor. It is selling a dose of moral dopamine to you. You are not a hypocrite. You are the customer of one of the most sophisticated sales campaigns of the century. Welcome to the starting point of one of the largest industries in the world, the poverty industry. What you just experienced is called the commercialization of pain. In this billion-dollar industry, human suffering is not a problem to be solved. It is an asset to be mined. That photo of the starving child was carefully selected from thousands of others. It was engineered to hit the exact psychological pressure point of the Western middle class. The guilt of being too comfortable. The unwritten rule here is ruthless. If the child smiles, you won't donate. If the child looks too healthy, your wallet stays closed. The child must look as miserable as possible for the charity machine to justify its existence. To understand how this machine works, let's look at a genius business model that took the world by storm. Buy one, give one. You buy a pair of trendy canvas shoes for $60, and the company promises to donate a similar pair to a child in the global south. It's a perfect offer. You don't just buy shoes, you buy a certificate proving you are a good person. But have you ever asked yourself what actually happens after you swipe your card? Turn off the glossy commercials and look at the naked truth. In the village receiving this aid, the average daytime temperature is over 35 degrees Celsius. The humidity is so high that clothes hung out to dry stay wet all day. The locals have adapted for generations by walking barefoot or wearing breathable sandals. And then the trucks arrive, dumping thousands of your canvas shoes. These shoes were designed for the dry, paved streets of Europe. When worn in this muddy tropical terrain, they instantly become a medical disaster. Enclosed shoes, combined with sweat, dirty water, and heat, create a perfect incubator for bacteria. Within weeks, the children's feet are eaten away by fungus and ulcers. Your humanitarian gift, ironically, becomes a burden of disease. But the economic tragedy is even bigger. Let's look at the story of the teacher. A classic example is the American Super Bowl. Before the final game, manufacturers print thousands of champion shirts for both teams. When the final whistle blows, the losing team's shirts instantly become waste. If destroyed in the US, the company pays a hefty environmental fee. So, what is the solution? They bail them up, slap a humanitarian aid label on them, and ship them to Africa. Why do they do this? Make no mistake, this isn't exactly kindness. It is financial optimization. By labeling it charity, this pile of garbage suddenly transforms into a recorded, charitable contribution, helping the corporation receive massive tax deductions from the government. That t-shirt is essentially a tax shield. The profit stays with the corporation. The waste is pushed to the poor countries, and it's all wrapped in the shiny packaging of benevolence. At this point you might argue, but free stuff is still good, right? What's the harm? This is the most deadly misconception. In economics, free goods are an invisible assassin, more powerful than bombs. Picture this. In the corner of a market in that village, there is a shoemaker named Amadi. His family has done this for 3 generations. Every day, he buys leather, buys thread, and diligently crafts durable sandals to sell for $5. That $5 feeds his family and supports the small supply chain in the village. But this morning, a charity truck parks right in front of his shop. They open the back and hand out shoes for free. What will Amadi's customers do? They will run across the street to get the shoes. Not because they hate him, but because the law of survival forces them to choose the cheapest option. No one pays $5 for something that is being handed out for free. Amadi stands there, Amadi Nan, watching the crowd cheer around the truck. Silence engulfs his little shop. It is the silence of economic death. In that moment, Amadi realizes he has lost his trade. He was defeated by the kindness of strangers halfway around the world. The shoe shop closes. The leather seller loses a customer. An entire local economic ecosystem collapses like dominoes, making way for total dependence on foreign trucks. As the sound of Amadi's hammer fades, another sound begins to rise. It is the roar of the latest modeled Land Cruiser engine. A pristine white convoy from an international organization rolls into the village. Welcome to the second level of charity hell, the Bureaucracy of Misery. Before we go further, let's be fair. I am not talking about emergency relief when earthquakes or tsunamis hit. When disaster strikes, a bowl of rice and a blanket are acts of humanity. What I am condemning here is the chronic subsidies that last for decades when there is no crisis, turning aid into an addiction. Back to Amadi. After losing his job, he was hired by the charity organization as a gate guard. Every morning, he stands at attention, saluting the project director, named Michael. Michael is a good man, full of passion. Michael's project this year is organizing classes on digital 4.0 skills and gender equality in the workplace for the villagers. Sounds very civilized and progressive, right? There's just one problem, absurdly small. This village doesn't have electricity grid, and the people don't even have a workplace to go to. Michael sits in an air-conditioned office, running a private generator, drafting beautiful reports on digital empowerment. Meanwhile, outside the gate, Amadi and the villagers just wish for a clean water well, so they don't get This disconnected needs wastes millions of dollars. But it helps Michael build a beautiful resume and helps his organization disperse funds on schedule. This is the cruel paradox. To help the poor, the charity machine requires a massive bureaucracy that consumes the majority of the budget. Do you remember the $10 you donated? According to financial reports, a huge chunk of that is swallowed by a monster called operating costs. It pays for business class flight tickets, for bulletproof Land Cruisers, and especially for poverty reduction conferences at 5-star hotels. Picture this scene. In the grand ballroom of a Hilton hotel, hundreds of international experts are watching a PowerPoint about starvation, then stepping out to enjoy a lobster buffet. They discuss the lack of clean water, while drinking imported mineral water from the Alps. This is not just waste. This is the formation of a parasitic ecosystem. The ultimate goal of any organization is its own existence. If the world ran out of poverty tomorrow, Michael and thousands of his colleagues would be unemployed. The core conflict of interest lies here. The charity industry needs the poor to remain poor, at least poor at a stable level so their machine has a reason to operate. The result, Amadi's village changes completely. The atmosphere of labor disappears. People no longer discuss business. The only story is, when is the charity delegation coming? How do I get on the poor household list? Poverty becomes a status to protect. If you work hard and get slightly richer, you get cut off from aid. So why try? The system is punishing effort and rewarding dependency. And in this picture, where is the local government? They are standing on the sidelines, smiling with their hands in their pockets. When Western organizations compete to do the state's job building schools, clinics, local officials receive the greatest gift, the freedom of it. Why use the national budget to care for the people when the Americans and Europeans are doing it for free? The state budget, instead of investing in infrastructure, is now freed up to flow into pockets of corruption or to buy weapons. International charity, instead of promoting development, unintentionally becomes a crutch for weak regimes. Amadi looks through the guardpost window, seeing children running after Michael's car, begging for candy. They no longer dream of being shoemakers or doctors to build their homeland. Their biggest dream now is to grow up and get a slot to migrate to the West. National dignity, the most precious asset, is being eroded day by day. But more dangerously, this machine is conducting a brutal experiment on the human mind. When the belly is full thanks to donated rice, the head begins to be controlled. We are stepping into a darker zone mental enslavement. The school gates open. It is a spacious school painted in the blue of hope, standing out starkly against the village's dilapidated huts. Amadi's son, now a 10-year-old boy with bright, intelligent eyes, steps into the classroom. Welcome to the deepest level of the poverty industry. If the previous parts were about economic and political devastation, this part is about the destruction of culture and soul. We are going to talk about a terrifying concept, programmed helplessness. Look at the textbook Amadi's son is holding. It is funded by a Western educational foundation. The first page teaches the letter A. The book says A is for apple. But children in this tropical region have only known mangoes, coconuts, and cassava their entire lives. The next page teaches about the 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter, with fireplaces and white snow. But in reality, Here there are only two seasons: the muddy rainy season and the scorching dry season. This disconnect implants a subconscious inferiority complex in the child. The civilized, standard world is somewhere far away, where there is snow and red apples. Their own world is deviant, lacking, and secondary. These children grow up memorizing the history of America or England, but are clueless about their own roots. They become foreigners in their own land. But the real danger lies in behavioral psychology. Let's talk about the famous experiment in the 1960s by psychologist Martin Seligman. He conducted an experiment on dogs by subjecting them to continuous uncomfortable stimuli that they could not avoid. Initially, the animals tried to escape, but after repeated failures, they gave up. The scariest part happened in the second phase, when he threw the cage door wide open, and the way out was right in front of them. The animals still lay there and took it. They could totally escape, but they didn't run. Their brains had learned a brutal lesson. All effort is meaningless. This is the mechanism of learned helplessness. Amadi's village is that cage, and humanitarian aid, ironically, is the mechanism that paralyzes the will. Observe a small incident. The roof of the communal health station leaked after a storm. Years ago, the villagers would have mobilized each other to fix it in an afternoon. But today, they are completely passive. They wait for the Chartier Land Cruiser. They wait for the project to approve the budget. The ability to solve problems, the most basic survival instinct, has been eradicated. The community has become weak, believing they cannot survive without outside help. Time flies like a shuttle. 10 years have passed since the day Amadi lost his job as a shoemaker. The little boy from back then has now grown into a handsome young man, the best student in the region. This is when the system delivers its final blow. The brain drain. The charity organization notices the talent of Amadi's son. They award him a full scholarship to study medicine in London or New York. The whole village celebrates. Amadi cries tears of happiness. This is a fairy tale that charities love to tell the most. But step back to look at the bigger picture. That young man, after becoming a doctor in the West, will he return to this impoverished village with no electricity or clean water to serve? The realistic answer is no. He will stay, work in modern hospitals, and send money home to his parents. The best, the brightest the seeds meant to change the nation's destiny have been extracted. Poor countries become raw human resource incubators for rich countries. We take their natural resources, then we take their human resources, and we call it help. That night, Amadi sat in his hut, holding his son's plane ticket. The circle is closed. The economy collapsed due to free goods. Culture was erased by imposed education. And now, the hope for the future is stripped away by scholarships. The only thing left is rage. Amadi's rage was not loud. It was simmering and cold, like the pile of ashes in the kitchen hearth. The next morning, the familiar sound of the Land Cruiser engine echoed again. This time, they brought blankets and powdered milk. The entire village rushed out like a conditioned reflex. But Amadi did not queue up. He stood in the dark corner of his hut, looking down at the free canvas shoes he was wearing. They had started to tear and smell of mold due to the humid tropical climate. He looked to the corner of the room, where his old set of tools lay covered in dust. A sharp thought flashed through his mind. He realized he had let his dignity be bought with surplus goods. Amadi took off the canvas shoes. With all his might, he hurled them out the window, straight toward the wheels of the charity convoy. The shoes landed in the dust. That was the signal flare for his own revolution. We have reached the finale. What is the way out for this industry? The answer lies in 3 words. Trade, not aid. The poor don't need free fishing rods when the pond is blocked. They need a fair playing field. Imagine instead of sending free shoes, a social enterprise comes to invest. They provide technology and commit to buying Amadi's products. Amadi will have to sweat, but in return he holds earned wages, not handouts. The money he earns creates the multiplier effect. He uses that money to buy leather from his neighbor, buy vegetables from the market lady. The shoe shop expands, and he hires more young men. Those young men have jobs. They no longer sit waiting for the charity trek. An upward spiral, sustainable 1,000 times over, compared to short-term projects. Back to the village. The Land Cruiser convoy has stopped in the middle of the yard. But in a corner of the village, another sound rings out. Tap, 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 tap. It is the sound of a hammer striking a shoe sole. Amadi has opened his workshop. He pulled out an old piece of leather from the corner luckily. It was wrapped carefully in oilcloth, so it is still good. He starts cutting. He isn't making enclosed Western shoes like the aid supplies. He is crafting open-toed leather sandals, durable and breathable, only things suitable for the feet of people in this region. The young men queuing for gifts begin to turn their heads. They look down at the moldy free canvas shoes on their feet, then look at the shiny leather sandals in Amadi's hands. They realize the difference. One is distributed trash, the other is a real product. They start leaving the line, walking toward the shoe workshop with small change in their hands. Tap, tap, tap. Amadi's hammer strikes steadily. It drowns out the sound of the car engines. It is not the sound of begging. It is the sound of rebirth. It signals that human dignity is something that cannot be destroyed, as long as these hands are still willing to work. And that is the true beginning of ending poverty.